All right. There we go. I'm starting to see things come through now. I see it on Scotto. Still waiting for Dave's channel to show up. There we go. Dave's channel just showed up. So, hey, everybody. Welcome back to Rocket Lab Weekly. Vince decided to desert us and left us with the opportunity to present on his behalf. No, just kidding. Vince has a conflict this week, and he still remains very bullish. So don't take this as a sign that Vince sold all of his shares. So summary of the last week, March 23rd through the 29th, most specifically for this particular paragraph or two, and then I'll hand it back to the other gentleman. Focus on SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Stoke, Astra, Firefly. I'm just going to read a quick little intro that I wrote here. The week showcased significant activity amongst a lot of these commercial companies, specifically SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Stoke, Firefly. Astra remained very quiet, so there's thoughts around whether or not they're continuing on or potentially restructuring their business once again. They obviously, SpaceX did the Crew 9 mission to bring home Nick Hague and Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore, concluding their extended stay on the ISS. And with that, they're going to have a conference on the 31st. So in 2 days' time or so, keep your eyes open for that. And Rocket Lab Stoke got the U.S. Space Force contract for the NSSL, so the National Security Space Launch, Phase 3 Lane 1, and that just happened 2 days ago, so very exciting about that. We'll touch into that. And that joins SpaceX, Blue Origin, ULA, in competing for $5.6 billion. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Rocket Lab's Neutron and Stoke's reusable medium lift designs are poised to challenge the Falcon 9 in this particular arena. Firefly Aerospace stayed in the spotlight after the Blue Ghost lunar lander, which launched on the Falcon 9 in January, continued its mission on the moon, and had very successful 10 NASA payloads in the area of the Moar Crisium. And then obviously Firefly growing its presence on lunar exploration, which is great. And what else is there that I kind of am stealing from these? I already talked a little bit about Astra. X hinted at potential NASA layoffs, which could potentially impact contractor relationships with all the companies, SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Stoke, Firefly, etc., but nothing specifically tied to any of that. And then let me just see if there's anything else in here. Some good news that I stole from Space Investor. So if you guys don't follow him, please go ahead and do so. He kind of gave me a quick summary about some other things that were going on in the week. And let's just see if there's anything else. Stoke, Firefly, Astra. We'll touch on some auxiliary stuff as well. Gentlemen, did I miss anything that you wanted to talk about today?
The only other thing is an extra Varda craft. They had an FCC filing for their 5th craft. We're still a little bit unsure about that, their Rocket Lab relationship, but it seems like their 5th craft will also be sent from home. So the one that's built by Rocket Lab we're still unsure about. 2026 at earliest, I suppose.
I'm confused. 5th craft with relation to who? I'm kind of lost. I'm not.
So Rocket Lab built the first. Well, Rocket Lab built 3, and then they had a contract extension for a 4th. But Varda seems to just be grounding that one, and the 4th that they're launching is going to be their own, and then the 5th, it was just announced, is also going to be Varda's own built. So the 4th one that was built from Rocket Lab is still just kind of up in the air and is 2026 at earliest, I suppose, for a launch.
Yeah, that piece of news I hadn't heard. Interesting.
Yeah, it just broke like yesterday. So, and that's pretty much kind of all there is just going to be their own again for whatever reason. Time will tell what's going on there, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. Let's just see. All right. I'm going to share my screen and run through some of these topics. And so please, if I am getting comments about it not being able to be seen or anything like that, it's on my other monitor. So specifically, let's dive into the Crew 9 astronauts and everything like that. Yeah, pop bottles. Anything with respect to this? Did you guys watch the landing, and did you see all the conspiracy theories on X about the Crew 9?
I don't know how far you want to go into it. I didn't see the landing. I had complete confidence that they would come home safely, which they obviously did. There's just way too much about this online that frustrates think a lot of people, and I'll just say I don't think it was a politically driven decision, and leave it at that.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the conspiracy part. Oh, I think I see what you mean. Yeah, politically.
Oh, what other conspiracies are we talking about here?
Oh, how they never actually went to space,
Oh, I
and
heard stuff
yeah,
about
like
that
all
too,
that
yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
Well,
Scotto,
maybe
is
they're
that
in
coffee
into
sip
aliens.
like a pass, or is that a?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've already shot myself in the foot with this. Like I've been, I don't know. It's like I mentioned in a previous episode. There's a huge difference between like going on a like if you say goodbye to your wife, I'll see you in 8 days, and then you come back after what 300 days. There's a big difference between that kind of mentality shift versus like knowing from the outset that you're going to be gone for 300 days. I don't know.
Sure, it's not nice.
That's my take. Yeah. So I'm interested to hear them speak in a couple days here, and just kind of see if there was just like, yeah, like of course we love being up there. If there's going to be a little bit of like, yeah, what took you guys so long? Like, so it'll be interesting to just kind of check their psyche, really.
I think it's a little unfair that like they get questioned about this because they're not making the decision on when they come home, what vehicle they come home on.
True,
So the fact that they kind of get grilled about it and have to try and be politically correct and whatever, I would rather hear from some or not. Hear some from officials, but it'll be interesting to see if the Starliner is going to require yet another uncrewed test flight. Starting to hear that might be possible, and that is rough for Boeing. Unbelievable.
Yeah. I'm also interested to hear about March. What they say on March 31st. I mean, specifically around. I mean, we all were impacted by what happened during the pandemic. This is kind of like a second pandemic for them, right? Where they were isolated from the rest of the world for so long without the ability to kind of live their daily lives. And I'm with you. I mean, it's very similar. Like we all thought, all right, we all sit in our homes for 2 weeks, 8 days in this case, and we'll be back, right? Everything back to normal. And here we are, 300 days later. So very comparable in that state. And it was very strange coming back from the pandemic and sitting with people at restaurants and like, the noise and, it just felt very strange, like kind of surreal. So I'm hoping these guys are able to adjust.
Yeah. One thing I will say on this, though, because a lot of these articles are talking about how horrible it was that they were up there that long. And yes, Scott, you're right. It is bad that they were up there way longer than they were expecting to. Definitely. And, no arguing that. But I think a lot of people don't seem to understand how long a regular stay at the ISS can be. Like a regular, if you're going up for like a regular tour of duty or whatever you call it, you're not up there for 2 weeks. You're like 6+ months. So, yes, they were over the usual time, but it's not like it hasn't been really unheard of. But I think it's getting cast in that light.
Yeah, that's a good point. They do a lot of testing too, which I'm kind of curious about. Like you stated, it wasn't abnormally long compared to, and I don't know how long the longest person. I'm sure they've had people up there for over a year, but they do routine exercises to maintain muscle strength and things alike. So I'm kind of curious if because they weren't scheduled, if they didn't have enough supplies or the ability to kind of rotate people into all these exercise machines, and if they had abnormal muscle deterioration because of that, like all these different things that I don't know anything about, and just gives me a little bit of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back into something fun with respect to Rocket Lab. Apologies for things that are showing up on any sides. I don't control that, but I did control checking out the launch. So we did have the launch for Aurora Tech. So here's the look at the beautiful cap on the second stage here, and specifically highlighting what exactly went into this. So this was the 63rd mission for Rocket Lab, where they launched 8 wildfire detection satellites into space. So nice to see. We have 63 successful launches, or I guess 63 launches, majority of which have been successful, and over 200 some total satellites deployed from Rocket Lab. So this is kind of cool, and you're actually seeing things from Spire, Exo Lunar, or Exo Launch, all these different satellites that help kind of create these underlying things that were actually sent into space. And the hope is to have thermal imaging cameras, specialized sensors to be able to detect wildfires and help with firefighters and emergency workers. And I think a lot of this stems from the LA fires, and there's so many Canadian fires every year as well. I'm assuming that that's what this is hoping to deal with. Gentlemen, anything?
There's supposed to be another 8 that are launching this year as well, though there hasn't been anything that's filed. But it's, fingers crossed that would fit the bill for Rocket Lab as well. I think especially with the turnaround time, like I think from the time it was announced to launch, it was just a few months. So I'm sure Aurora Tech likes that, and I'm sure it bodes well for hopefully a long-term relationship. And Dave, maybe you can speak to this as well, but like this constellation is supposed to be like 100 plus satellites, isn't it?
That I have to admit I haven't looked into.
Okay.
In any
I saw in passing once. I think it's like 100 or 200 satellites fully built out. So we're on the first 8.
Damn it, Dave! You're our expert. You're supposed to know these things.
I know.
No, I'm just kidding. Wow, that's cool. I will definitely have to look at that. I did not hear anything about 100 satellites.
Yeah, hopefully happy return customer then.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I thought this was kind of like a one and done.
I guess my only takeaway is I'm just, obviously great that it's a successful mission, and I'm very happy with the cadence we've seen so far in Q1. 5 in the quarter, that lines us up well for at least 20 in the year, especially because Q1 is usually a bit lighter. So,
can you guys remind me? This was a quick turnaround, right? This was from like 4 months to launch or something like that. Or was this a different mission that was 4 months to launch? There's been so many. It's hard to keep up sometimes. With all the launches.
I'm just looking now. It was announced in January, and I think it was signed. I don't remember. No, it was this one was the October and November is what I figured for this signing. So
Okay.
yeah, 4 months, give or take, I suppose that'd be.
Perfect. Let's just take a quick look, if you guys don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know if you can hear the audio. No audio? I feel like Vince. Let me see. Share audio, share a tab or screen instead. Entire screen. There we go. Also share audio.
Oh, there we go.
Cool. Awesome to see.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, moving on from that. So that means 3 launches in 2 weeks from Launch Complex 1, which I think might be the best cadence that we've seen thus far. Obviously helping support Earth imaging, space connectivity, and now wildfire detection with Aurora Space. This was pretty cool to kind of see. Anything you guys want to add on this one? The 3 different customers as well. Kinesis, QPS, and Aurora Tech.
Yeah, I didn't look into this. Maybe one of you guys know, was all 3 of these missions from the same actual pad, or was one from like pad 2 and one number 1?
It went pad. Where was that? It alternated. It was.
It did.
Pad,
okay.
Oh, I can't find it. But
just curious if that affects
yeah.
their ability to turn around so quickly.
Yeah, it was B, A, and then I think the most recent one was B again.
Okay.
But like I think I mentioned it last week in the episode. There was that like 24-hour turnaround, but I was always kind of like nitpicking, like, well, that was technically 2 different launch sites altogether. This is, in my opinion, so much more impressive that it was like 3 launches in 12 days is what it was. So it's like just a huge testament for the cadence, especially all like going through January, that dry spell, and then kind of like being like, well, are we just having 1 launch, 2 launches this quarter, and then Rocket Lab just kicked it in high gear, and now we're at 5. So
Yeah.
very impressive.
Very impressive. Yeah, I think I not only that, but the fact that they're using both both pads at once, or at least within because for a while, I think it was only the A pad that was being used, and people were kind of critiquing, like, why do you have a second pad if you're not going to use it, sort of thing. So the fact that they're kind of alternating is good. And while the thing that gives me hope is while you aren't seeing potentially this sort of cadence all the time, you're at least seeing the potential to get to this cadence, right? You're seeing that maybe you're not going to get to 3 launches every 12 days all the time, but you could get potentially 1 launch per week, which might lead to something like 52 launches, every year, potentially from New Zealand. And then who knows with respect to the Haste aspect of things, which I think is the only thing that has been launched out of Launch Complex 2 in Virginia so far is Haste missions. That might be increasing cadence as well, and hopefully we'll get closer to 50 to 75 launches here within the next couple of years. Not like this year, of course. I'm still kind of expecting between 20 and 25 launches, but
yeah, I don't know if we'll ever get there. I hope so. They've kind of said at conferences they could see maybe like 30s, but it becomes more of a demand issue than their ability, I think, to build and launch rockets at that point.
I think so. Yeah, I think you'll either have to have further consolidation or more people launching to space. Not companies, but more people wanting payload to space. Cool. And then we have this beautiful Haste launch that was actually what's the word I'm looking for? Debuted during the launch on Wednesday, which I kind of wrote as the secret is out. Some people were kind of like, is Haste actually a real thing? Is the cadence? But now they're actually actively advertising it. So unless you guys want to preface with anything, I'm just going to launch the video.
No? Go ahead.
Hypersonic velocities are anything above Mach 5. You think about a commercial airline, that's subsonic, which means slower than the speed of sound. You've got supersonic, which is the range in between, faster than the speed of sound up to about Mach 5. And then Mach 5 is above that. So think faster than the fastest fighter jet you know about. Starting a couple years ago, the Secretary of Defense said there's a problem. We need more affordable and higher cadence hypersonic test flight. We said, we have an orbital launch vehicle that's already flying once a month, and came up with the idea for Haste. Haste is an acronym that stands for Hypersonic Accelerator Suborbital Test Electron. The beauty of Haste is that it leverages all of the good stuff of what an electron is. From stage 2 down, we pull one off of the production line. We tailor our stage 3, which is a kick stage, for that reentry condition, very precise tip-off requirements, and a variety of exit velocities. So it's all of the good, it's the high cadence, the affordability, tailored for those very unique applications. So that's the beauty of using a liquid-fueled launch vehicle like Haste. The heritage systems have all been solid-fueled bottle rockets. You light them and they go. You get fractions of a second of relevant hypersonic test environment. Here, we can throttle, we can gimbal, so we can achieve everything from a direct inject trajectory, a boost glide trajectory, which is called depressed, or more of a parabolic re-entry kind of trajectory, all with one launch vehicle. With Haste, we've already launched 3 times, and we have many more in the hopper this year and next year for the programs, MACH-TB, Missile Defense Agency, and some other industry partners. We've done a variety of trajectories already, and we've achieved our cadence. Truly, I don't think there's ever been something like this in the past. You've either spent hundreds of $millions on a test platform that launches maybe once or twice a year and doesn't quite get you what you need, or they're too small. They're sounding rockets, and you get fractions of a second of relevant test environment. But we can do it all on one platform at a commercial price and cadence. I don't think anything's ever existed like it.
The thing I hear most out of this, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts around this as well, because Haste has been this new revenue stream that's coming through, utilizing the Electron vehicle as kind of a side stream of income. But the thing that got me in there is 2 things, I guess. Let me take a step back. So what Adam Spice has referred to this as is kind of replacing the Minotaur 4, which is like a $50 million per launch vehicle, and they might be lucky to launch it once or twice per annum. And so overall, it's going to cost them the government $100 million a year to launch. Now, Haste is a fifth of the cost of that. So that's going to obviously allow them to test more opportunities as well as different trajectories, etc., as they kind of alluded to in the video. The thing that bothered me in this video, and then I want to hand it over to you guys. He said we reached our cadence. The thing that bothers me with that is, does that mean that it's only going to be something that launches maybe 5 to 10 times per annum? Or is that they're actually going to be, like, in terms of cadence, does that mean there's still more room to grow? It's kind of confusing language. Like, I don't understand what he's trying to say there.
Yeah, and just to kind of jump back, or to circle back to what we were mentioning earlier, there have been, I think, 5 launches from Wallops to date, and 3 of those were orbital, and then the other 3 were Haste. So 6 total, I guess. 6? That'd be right. And this has always been a point of confusion, for lack of a better term. Is they've always advertised Wallops as a 12 launch per year capacity. But then as of May of 2024, of the 18 annual launches that are authorized, only 6 can involve liquid-fueled rockets, which Electron would fit that bill. Now, there has been applications for an expansion to that, but that's always been something like they've always advertised 12 launches per year, but technically, until recently, assuming this has even gone through by now, only 6 of those could have been what would be Electron. So maybe that's what he means when he says they've hit the cadence, and soon to be a new cadence, hopefully. That's my take on it anyway.
Thank you for correcting me, by the way. I wasn't sure if we'd done actual Electrons.
It was the first couple, and then one that was in 2024, I think it was. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know local government and industry definitely wants to expand the use of Wallops, and they will eventually go well beyond the 12 number or the 6 liquid fueled rocket number eventually, and it'll be a matter of getting infrastructure in place as well as the permitting for that. But I think it's only a matter of time, and very excited about what Haste is going to bring the next few years. I think it's going to continue to be the biggest growing, basically customer of Electron, I guess, for lack of a better, or segment maybe is a better word.
Yeah, there's so much to dive into with this, because we've asked in previous conversations with Peter and Adam specifically, is Haste something that can be done, internationally at different launch sites? And the answer was yes. So we haven't seen that yet. So that kind of gives me a little bit more feeling like if they are limited to 6 liquid launch vehicles, or maybe it even goes to 12 or whatever, then Haste doesn't necessarily have to be specifically at Wallops. And when will we see the next potential at a different launch site? Is it going to be Australia, New Zealand, etc.? I don't know the answer to that, but it kind of makes me scratch my head. And we know we have other customers that are going to be trialing out Haste in the future as well. So kind of curious with respect to that. And then the other piece was crap. It just slipped my mind. It was something off of what you just said, Dave. But regardless, I think it also makes me question, maybe you know this, Scott, because you just mentioned it. Does that 6 liquid launch, no, and then I remember my other thing, does that 6 liquid launch also apply to Neutron? Or is it specifically Launch Complex 2? I'll leave you with that. And then the other one that I have heard in the past that people said, oh, Haste can't be used as a hypersonic vehicle because it's not solid fuel, it's liquid fuel. And you just heard within here the reason why it gives benefit, right? You get throttle up and down versus solid. You just have one pace, right? It's just go, right? You can't trim it back or use a valve to kind of shut it down or throttle back up, which I think is something that I never really thought about, but there's that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get back to you on the Neutron edition, because I assume it wouldn't include that, but I don't want to speak too definitively.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that means one of two things. So either anticipate getting an expansion of that to include more than 6 liquid fuel, or it doesn't include Neutron because it's a different launch complex. Because I guess it's the 3rd launch, the pad, rather than the 2nd, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think regardless, it's going to have to rapidly increase. I mean, not just Neutron, we've got MLVs going to come from and launch out of Wallops. I think we heard Stoke may be ending up launching out of Wallops. So, I mean, they're planning for rapid expansion. Clearly, they're not going to stick with like a 12 launch per year cap.
Actually, I'm just reading. I brought up this TechCrunch article that I got the last stuff I was speaking about, and the new analysis would authorize 52 launches per year and allow fuel mix that also includes methalox, which I think that's Neutron, right?
I think so. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And it mentions relativity space as well as Blue Origin and SpaceX's Starship. I'm not sure if that's per the site. No, I don't know.
Maybe
Those
they're
are
talking about
mentioned.
methalox vehicles.
I think they're just talking about methalox in general at that point. But yeah, 52 launches is hopefully or ideally the next cap. So plenty of room to grow from here.
Perfect. Talking about expanding, Neutron has the opportunity now to participate in the NSSL, which is basically Space Force's national security launch program, up to $5.6 billion worth of spend amongst multiple partners. So this obviously includes ULA, SpaceX, Blue Origin at the moment, but has now been expanded to include Neutron as well as Stoke. Gentlemen, initial thoughts?
A lot of confusion around this one. I think a lot of folks were kind of understandably under the misunderstanding that this was a $5.6 billion increase to Rocket Lab's backlog, but it's quite far from the case, as you pointed out, Matt. There are other players in the ring, and they're all competing for what's left of the 5.6 billion, because I think SpaceX has already taken 9 of these launches. So like 9 times 70, be like 630 million of that pool, assuming these are just $70 million a pop for each Falcon 9. And I also wouldn't be surprised if we see Firefly / Northrop Grumman added to the list in short order. And, if all goes well for Relativity and Astra, they'd be even added to that list as well. But in terms of when
Astra,
this,
really?
well,
don't they have some minimum requirements in terms of like mass to LEO and stuff like that? I thought you needed more than 1 ton. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but
for Rocket 4, but like, I don't, I just figured I'd put it out there to be fair if we're going to bring up potential launches for next year,
credible path to launch.
Yeah. But this news is like a great stepping stone, but it's nothing immediate for sure, because in order for Neutron to even be certified to bid, they still need to have a successful launch under their belt. So Q3, Q4 of this year, they're going to be missing the bidding process for this year, which is they're handed out annually. So long story short, what I'm saying is the first NSSL contract we probably won't see till Q3 of next year anyway. So it's a good step in the right direction, but it's not going to start hitting bottom or backlog, I should say, until second half of 2026 at earliest, I bet.
Yeah. Nor is there like a big urgency to either, considering like the cadence that they're able to ramp up to, I guess. So they have 2 launches already, and they're hoping for 3 next year, although they've changed the wording a little bit on that. I don't know if you guys saw the CNBC interview that Peter Beck just did, where now he's kind of saying at least 3, which I think sounds exciting. But I think it's a big step in the right direction. It's been something I've been waiting on and looking for quite a while. Obviously, they tried to get in last year and didn't. So very happy to see it. I really hope the NSSL will be kind of one of the cornerstone customers for Neutron. And, even beyond this, oh my God, what is it? Tranche or version, whatever. They'll be beyond 2029. There'll be another one. So yeah, really exciting stuff to see them get in. But yeah, obviously they're not immediately adding, $5 billion to the backlog. Were you guys surprised at all that Stoke got in as well?
I was.
Yes.
I was I thought they were a little bit further away from, launching, and a little surprised to see that they also made the cut here.
Yeah, can you guys remind me? after doing some looking, they're still in the design phase. So I don't know if they've actually, other than the engine, have cut any steel or maybe a carbon fiber, whatever they're utilizing to build the rocket for Stoke. But I don't think they've actually done much testing other than the engine. So I'm kind of curious. Do you guys know when the launch is? I thought it was 2027, but I could be mistaken.
Well, it has to be. They have to have shown a reasonable, credible path to launching this year in order to get onboarded. So clearly, they've convinced someone that they have a credible path to launching. We have seen them do little hops of their second stage, their reusable second stage. Although I think their first few launches they've said will not be recovered, but I don't think we've seen too much in terms of the first stage body. Maybe some tanks, but we have seen their engines test firing, and that's looked pretty impressive.
Perfect. Yes, an update as well. I saw some people wondering if this was a reused picture or if this was rather new. You're continuing to see everything being put up. You got, I assume this is a flare stack. You have the water tower here in the middle, and you have obviously the launch pad specifically here.
Yeah.
Anything you guys want to note on this one?
Well, I did pull up Rocket Lab's Flickr webpage when I saw that they tweeted this. And this one is the same as a picture that they posted on there from February 28th. So,
Okay.
Potentially there's been some work since then.
Okay. That's good to know. That is good to know. Yeah, interesting to kind of see it coming along.
Mm-hmm.
It looks small. Like, this is the thing. It looked like the pad kind of looks small from this far away, but we're elevated, and I'm like sitting here. I don't know how large this water tower is, because when you look at the water tower, it actually looks small as well. Like, you're like, oh, it's kind of skinny. Like, I'd expect it to be more. So I'm actually kind of curious how many gallons are held up here in the water tower. Because that would maybe give me because I've seen people standing next to these tanks. I remember when, crap, I'm going to get her name wrong. Madison, yeah, walk through with the gentleman to look through and walk past these, and they're rather large. So
yeah,
the fact that they look small here, or maybe it was these tanks. Regardless, I think they're probably comparable in size, regardless of whose tanks they are, or what tanks they are. Yeah, so I don't think that this does it justice. I mean, I guess you could say that these are two human beings. So I guess if you were to put them right next to this, it is way larger than what I would give credit for the picture.
Yeah, I think some of those close-ups where you have a person, standing under one of those tanks, it gives you a better sense of just how big these things are.
Yeah. So going back to kind of unless you have anything else about that, gentlemen? No? Going back to kind of what Scotto was talking about with the Varda space and their Winnebagos, here's the Pioneer. And this is kind of a cool post. It goes into a little bit about the solar arrays, the star trackers, reaction wheels, which I know is Scott's favorite. So is there anything in particular in this post that you wanted to kind of touch on? Some really cool photos.
I mean, it's cool. We've seen the spacecraft before. Yeah. I'll let Scott, you can chime in on this, and then there was someone with a super chat asking a question I did want to address, if you guys don't mind. But Scott, do you have any thoughts on the spacecraft?
Nothing I haven't said on this show probably too many times. I'm just so fascinated with this relationship with Varda and Rocket Lab, and just kind of a waiting game at this point, like with what's going on with who. And I guess my biggest question is, like, Varda's next launch is in June, if memory serves. I'm curious if they're still using Rocket Lab's software at that point, or if they have developed their own, or like, I'm just really interested to see what happens to Varda in the second half of this year.
Yeah, I think we can all see the long-term trajectory they're angling for is more of a little more vertically integrated, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, what do you guys think? Is SpaceX going to get more launches than anyone else in that NSSL program?
I mean, huge head start so far. we've got 9 already. There's like a minimum of 30 launches within that 5.6 billion, but like if you just divide 5.6 billion by 30, that's like 166 million, I think, per launch. So obviously, I mean, there's got to be at least 60 at that rate launches within that pot. But yes, in short, yeah, I think so.
Eloquently stated. I agree.
I think so too. You got Vulcan, has been a little slow to ramp up, and hopefully they're making good progress there, but they still have a ways to go to kind of hit the cadence they need, and they have other customers too. So between that and obviously Neutron still ramping up, I think hopefully these other entrants will get some, but maybe the next gen beyond 2029 is when we start to see the playing field change a little bit more.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go back to something like Curtis, or maybe it was Dougie, had mentioned in previous episodes in the comment section, which is like 70 to 80% of the launches are for Starlink. And so I'm actually kind of curious if when you talk about the actual commercial customer clients that SpaceX has, are they launching as much as they can? In terms of like the non-Starlink sort of components of their business. And if that's the case, I'd actually like to kind of track those customers separately than Starlink. Not to say that it's not important. It's still very important for the cadence of the vehicle and everything like that. But that's the market share that I kind of want to keep track of, is like, how much are you competing? Because as you kind of stated very well earlier, Dave, the potential for maybe 3 or more launches next year. The second one might be another R&D launch, maybe like the first one. I don't know, but it seems like there is definitely one commercial customer that is anticipated to be launched in 2026, if not 2. And so I'm kind of curious, like, if you were to track how far away is Rocket Lab in terms of actually getting to a comparable cadence, and how much of that market share, because if that continues to grow, that market, meaning the commercial customer in Rocket Lab, is actually, you're not comparing against 100 plus launches per year at that point. You may be comparing against 20 to 30 launches per year.
Yeah.
And I don't want to try to make the numbers look better for Rocket Lab. Maybe that's what it seems like I'm trying to do. But then it makes you think, well, how is Rocket Lab then going to do their Flatellite, right? And I would like to keep track in the future of how many Flatellite launches versus how many commercial launches, right? Just like how anybody would kind of keep track of R&D launches, right? In terms of, well, are you actually making money? Or are you just doing it for R&D purposes? So I'm kind of curious in the future. That's something I want to highlight a little bit more.
Yeah, we did see a good article from Payload Space where they researched Falcon 9 commercial customers, how much of the capability of the rocket they were using. And it was found that they're usually underutilizing it significantly, but they just, they need the rocket to go in a certain place, and there's not a lot of options. So
precisely, yeah. Actually, in my Rocket Lab article that I put on Seeking Alpha, I addressed just that. So I think it was 3,200 or 3,500. I'm going to get the exact number wrong in terms of kilograms. But if you think about it, you don't need the full capability of a Falcon 9 at that point, because I think Falcon 9 has grown from 17-ish thousand to over 20,000 kilograms. And so if they're still charging 70 million versus Neutron charging 55 for that average payload of, let's say, 3,200, 3,400, I forget what the exact number was, you're spending $16,000 per kilogram to get into orbit utilizing the Neutron versus 20 or 21,000 using the Falcon 9. So it is a competitive advantage. And, you don't need, I doubt you'll need much more than 15 to 18,000 kilograms to orbit. And so, in my opinion, I think Neutron's at a competitive spot, and hopefully the design, which allows it to be reused, will definitely bite into potentially that market share.
Ironically, you're almost starting to make an argument for Stokes' Nova vehicle at that point, because some of those payloads are so small. But anyway.
Good point. Let me get this back up on the screen. So many people have talked about this one, and so wanted to get the room's opinion specifically around future SDA, Space Development Agency, tranches for their what is it, defense layers that they're building. So Rocket Lab was obviously awarded some of these. SpaceX has been awarded some of these and some others. But the thought was during Tranche 3, which is yet to be awarded, the thought is that they actually will just consolidate that and send it all to SpaceX. Now, I don't know how much of this is speculation versus truth. And so I'm kind of curious to hear your guys' thoughts, if you've gotten more research on this or not.
I mean, apparently there's a couple sources talking about it. It sounds like it's under discussion. To me, if that were to happen, like, it would be a big blow to the overall thesis and, you know, what I've been thinking of in my head for, you know, the future of Rocket Lab, because, you know, I've kind of been counting on the SDA Tranche 3 to and beyond, even, of course, to be an ongoing customer for them, and like basically their biggest customer for space systems. So I don't know how likely it is. And the other thing that really threw me off about that is, like, okay, let's say you don't like how things are going and you want to change it. Maybe the Star Shield looks good to you. Surely there has to be some kind of a competitive process, right? They don't just say, okay, give it to Star Shield. Like, surely they would have to have some kind of a bid, and maybe Rocket Lab can say, well, there's Flatellite. Like, I don't know. So, like, how do you just say, let's just give it to SpaceX? You know, even if you think they can do it cheaper, like, there must be some kind of process for, like, RFPs being released and something, I would think.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. Like, it seems like I mean, there's no shortage of government programs that are being cut right now, and I think generally they make sense, the ones that are being removed. But like, the SDA kind of at its heart is kind of like a government efficiency program, like kind of what Dave's saying, where it's like, if you're one of these legacy players that is used to showing up to the game and saying like, hey, we'll build what you need for 50 million, but also maybe 80 million with a wink on the side, like, this type of the SDA program is going to be like, no, you're going to build it with this price, deliver it on this date, or don't bother signing up again for the next round. And so, like, by that very nature, it's like, honestly, it's what more government programs need to be. It's kind of competitive at heart and kind of weed out the laggards.
Yeah, I don't know what to believe either. I mean, I would find it very difficult for people to think that the initial contract is at risk, those 18 satellites that we had, because those are anticipated to be delivered by 2027 timeframe. So I feel like I don't want to say cut steel, because that might be an oil and gas term, but I mean, we've definitely gotten to the place where we're not just designing those opportunities, but actually making them at this point. And I think that that's been documented. I might be wrong on that. I'm wrong often, so you guys know that. But I anticipate that it's so close now that they've actually started to order, you know, and get long leads associated with building some of these satellites. So I don't think that first tranche, but agreed with what you said, Dave. Future ones where they have thousands. I think they have in total 4,000 satellites planned. I think that number might be wrong. It might be 2,000, might be 4,000, but thousands, and not more than hundreds have been awarded across Tranche 1 and Tranche 2. So lots of opportunity. But the thing that does still give me a little bit of hope is, even if this does get consolidated, there is still the opportunity potentially to who's launching these, which I don't think has been awarded yet. So
sorry to cut in there. But yeah, you made a good point, because these are going to be launched under that NSSL program we were talking previously that Rocket Lab just is getting onboarded to. So then there would be some task orders, you know, coming up in there when these satellites are ready to launch to compete for. But I wonder if they rejig this whole thing and say everything is now SpaceX Starshield, will they not just say, okay, makes sense to launch those on the Falcon 9. That's what it was designed for. And then it would no longer be in the NSSL. So there'd be a double hit there if that were to happen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know. It would definitely be a change of the way that things have been going. To me, you still see NASA and many other companies that, and to me, are, in my opinion, dead in the water, still getting NASA contracts to kind of keep them alive, even though they're headed towards a known fate, in my opinion. And so I think that NASA, as well as the government, Space Force, Space Development Agency, Department of Defense are all still trying to keep a lot of these players in the game until it's certain that they get bankruptcy is in their horizon. So I just think it would be a total shift of what we've seen over the past 4 to 5 years as the government trying to keep up some of these companies and keep them afloat. But maybe that's also part of this government's approach, right? Why keep something afloat and try to save, try to save the finger if you can save the arm sort of thing, where you're spending money on some sort of bleeding out opportunity that we know is headed towards bankruptcy and there's a 5% chance it might survive. If you could just give that money to a known player like SpaceX, or hopefully Rocket Lab, hopefully they've demonstrated enough capability to be part of that versus, let's say, an Astra, which hasn't launched anything over the past several years.
I do think, short term, a move like that may pay off for them, but long term, the government that is, but long term, it would really be, stifling the competition and the environment they're trying to create for, the future services they want to buy. So, if they do that, it would start out cheap and then eventually, you only have one vendor. So what'll happen?
You're kind of in the same situation you are right now with Northrop and Lockheed and these guys charging you $50 million per launch, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We have a few auxiliary things to talk about. We can touch more in depth or less in depth, or if you guys want to venture the conversation elsewhere, we could be more than happy to do so. But Spire Global, which we saw was a helper of creating some of the satellites that went into space for Aurora Tech, has a new CFO. So this individual, Allison Engel, is effective April 1st, the new individual. So they've served as the CFO of Lease Accelerator, which is a software as a service company over the past 24 months or so. And then they were also Dallas News Corp, a bunch of other things as well. So interesting to see. Do you guys know much about Spire?
I kind of lost my excitement around them when it sounded like that maritime deal that they were selling off those assets was falling through. And they also had, some issues with accounting and reporting and stuff like that. It just seemed like things, for a while, it seemed like things were exciting. And then it seemed like it might be a bit too much of a mess right now to invest in. The new CEO as well. But I don't know. Hopefully this new officer helps turn that around. What do you think, Scott?
I don't know much about Spire, largely due to when I started trying to look into them, I started going over the numbers and then it was like, well, wait, where's Q2 of 2024? And then now it's like, I'm looking for Q3, Q4, and now we're and they're supposed to reinstate their financials in February and that got pushed back to April. And now we're seeing there's a new CFO. So I don't know. It's a big blind spot because I'd like to compare Spire's financials to Black Sky and Planet Labs, but without them reporting their earnings, it makes that kind of tricky.
Speaking of reporting earnings, interesting news out of Intuitive Machines. It looks like they are not done as of yet. Interesting to hear. Just some headline numbers. Backlog, 22% increase year over year to 328 million. Completed an upsized 125 million of common stock and private placement with some South Korean pharmaceutical companies and strategic investors. They did get more potential moon missions, which I think is supposed to launch in 2027. And let's just see. They achieved 55 million in Q4, which is up 79% year over year. 228 million for the year and nearly 3 times what they did in 2023. Let's just see. They anticipated, I think it was towards the end of 2026 to be EBITDA break even, it looks like. So continue drive towards profitability with positive gross margins in Q4 and full year, and their second consecutive quarter of positive gross margins. So I think maybe it was cash flow break even next year is, I think, what I heard. They ended with 270 million in cash, and after March 10th, with the influx of the private placement, up to 385. Gentlemen, any thoughts?
Well, I successfully managed to capture all the downside on this one with none of the upside. So, had a small position, was playing it for fun. It was like, whatever, this will be fun. They'll play this lunar landing. I think they'll nail it this time because they missed it last time. Obviously, we all know they landed sideways, wasn't successful. At that point, I was kind of like, my confidence is really shaken in this team now. Ended up selling out. And then the earnings were actually quite good. And seems like their NSN, which is basically this near space network program with NASA, they have a big contract there to support communications, out into deep space. It's called near space, but out to the moon and beyond is quite a big driver for them. So I guess it's not the end of the world that they failed 2 lunar landers, but my confidence is still not as high as it was previously.
Yeah, I also played the options game on this one. Luckily, it was a calculated loss. I think it was 3,200 or 3,500. I don't remember exactly, but that went 100% to zero. I was just like, you know what? Let me just wear it. I forget what it was, and I think it just expired either this past Friday or maybe it was last Friday. I don't remember. I guess it shouldn't have been. I don't know why. Anyway, but I think it expired at this point. 100% loss of that $3,200 or $3,500. So my hope was the same, right? That they would stick the landing and the stock would run north of $20, and unfortunately, it didn't have that. So, but I think for me, I didn't realize I haven't really been following IM as much as I probably should have, or LUNR, if you want to use the ticker. And I'm surprised by the cash position, and that the fact that they're, regardless of being able to stick the landing or not, actually still doing relatively well from a margins perspective to not be burning as much cash, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add for these guys. I looked over their financials like 6 months ago or something and was kind of on the fence about it, and just kind of been on the sidelines ever since.
Nothing wrong with that. You can't take a swing at everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Axiom Space. So don't know if you guys know much about that. There's just two last topics, and I'm curious if there's anything else guys want to talk about. Axiom Space set for a $100 million boost from 1789 Capital, Type 1 Ventures. So I think in the past they've gotten $300 million from others. I'm not 100% certain what these guys do, but it's a pre-money valuation of approximately $2 billion. So interesting to see that some space companies are still without much addition to the contribution of commercial projects or sending NASA anything. Still getting $1 billion pre-market valuations, pre-money valuations.
I mean, I'm glad to see it. I don't have, clearly any skin in the game, privately traded, but I think the Artemis program's relying on them for spacesuits, and just, I want to see more successful space companies. So, hopefully they execute and use this capital wisely, and maybe one day we'll see them as a publicly traded company as well as supporting astronauts going to the moon.
They're building a space station as well. That's Axiom as well, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't know much about the progress. The name is very familiar, but don't know much about.
There's a few out there building space stations: Axiom, Voyager, and obviously you have Blue Origin talking about it. But we'll see how many actually materialize.
Mm-hmm.
And then the community that loves me the most on X. So ASTS Space Mobile. I don't know what's asking me. I'm just going to click that. Got another $43 million contract with the Space Force. So specifically around the SDA, which I think was interesting because we've been talking about the SDA a good bit. And so let's just read a little bit. So first and only space-based cellular provider for broadband networks accessible directly by everyday smartphones, designed for both commercial and government applications. Today announced a new contract in support of the United States Space Development Agency through prime contractor with a total expected revenue of $43 million. Who do you think this prime contractor is?
I'm not sure if this might be a bit of an older piece of news.
Is it? It might be.
Unless
February 26th, sorry.
Yeah.
Not that.
I mean, I don't have a ton to. My
Yeah.
knowledge of AST is not vast, so.
There's mine.
Same boat, yeah.
Interesting. Well, that puts us at 55 minutes. I'm curious if there's anything else you guys want to chat about before we sign off for the week.
Dave, can I pick your brain on Planet Labs earnings? You're still a holder, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I gave them once over. I didn't do like a deep dive, but sure.
What's your take on it?
I mean, I don't like. I want more growth, basically.
Mhm.
To be honest, I'm starting to think of just giving up on that one. I know they're getting close to profitability, adjusted EBITDA. I believe they were adjusted EBITDA positive that quarter. Was that right?
They were, but then I took another look and they're guiding for a full year of negative EBITDA again. So I thought they were kind of over that, cresting that hill, and it was all up from here. But
yeah, so you're feeling good about the earnings then?
no, no. I'm still kind of like picking through it, but I was just, yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. This next year is not going to be too great, but then they're saying like 2x in revenue from this upcoming full year to the year following. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what to think of it.
I just wonder, like, obviously I love the idea behind what they were trying to do and, build out Earth observation for, climate and environment and all this cool stuff. But it feels like it's hard not to be targeting defense when you're doing Earth observation for like your biggest customer. So I worry about that. I wonder if they're a little too idealistic, maybe. I have some questions about Will Marshall, and yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
And maybe I'll just ask you, so the new wording we've heard, especially in this new recent CNBC interview with Peter Beck, where he kind of said at least 3 Neutron launches next year and then at least 5. Are you guys modeling for more Neutron launches now? Do you think that's just like a slight tweak in the language, or how bullish is that, if anything?
I think kind of bullish, because like not even just the mention of this year, I feel like Peter's often like, yeah, this year, but it's a launch program, right? But this one, he's just like, yeah, this year. And it just seemed, maybe he's just kind of being a little more of a salesman because he was on, Manifest Space or whatever. But he did seem very confident about this year. And yeah, he mentioned this is the first time they've mentioned it too, like a minimum of 3 next year and minimum of 5 the year after. So it seems like maybe, I don't know. I think that's a bullish signal.
One thing that starts to annoy me a little bit is how interchangeably they use these terms, get it to the pad and launch. Because in 1 second, same interview, he's like, yeah, we'll get it to the pad for sure. And I'm like, wait a second. Are you saying that maybe they won't launch? And then like 2 sentences later, he's like, oh yeah, we'll launch or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I don't know. But I just wish they would just stick to saying launch. But
yeah, it's like PTSD from last year.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Pete's generally very particular about the words he chooses and tries not to be a hype man. So I feel like if he says a minimum of 3, that means he's very confident. But it is a rocket program, and he states that all the time. So it's hard to kind of get excited without even having a first one off the pad yet.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, gentlemen. Well, I appreciate you hanging with me in Vince's absence, and glad we're allowed to keep the streak alive. We had a pretty good turnout. Dave held over about 100 the whole time. I held about over 50, and Scotto had over 30 some at points. So glad that everyone was able to chime in. Apologies to my audience. I wasn't able to chat as much. Normally I'm giggling like a little schoolgirl and typing away, but Vince doesn't get enough credit. It does take a little bit of time and effort to get all these tabs open. So shout out to Vince.
Before we hang up, did anyone add any shares, sell any shares this week?
Always. Scott, what about you?
Not Rocket Lab. No, I bought a couple Canadian companies for maybe against my better judgment, but we'll see how
Okay.
things go for the next
No
few
problem
months.
with that.
So you
Yeah,
added some shares, Matt?
I sold SoFi, so
Okay.
I had sold SoFi. I was up 100% or so. I forget when, but I think it was like the 16, 17 range, and I sold 100, not 100, half of my shares, and I had sold the remaining half of my shares, and I put about half of that, maybe slightly more, into Rocket Lab. And what was the other things that I bought? I think I bought some Nubank and some Venture Global, which is a natural gas LNG export company. But bought, I think it was close to 600 or 700 shares of Rocket Lab. So hopefully getting closer and closer every day to. I start doing the numbers where I'm like, if Rocket Lab gets to X share price, I'm like, it's a pretty good nest egg. So excited. Not there yet, right? I want to guarantee something where it's like, if Rocket Lab only 3Xs, right? It only gets to like a $30 billion company, right? I'll be, it'll make me an X amount of millionaire this many times over. But yeah, it's just adding to the pile at this point. So glad to be a shareholder. Very much more convicted in Rocket Lab than SoFi. SoFi's a great company, so I'm not saying or I'm bearish on SoFi. It's just my conviction in Rocket Lab is much, much higher. And when you only hold less than 10 stocks, individual companies, meaning it's hard to make it into my portfolio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't make any trades this week. Of Rocket Lab. I added a few shares of Redwire, actually, just because they've had quite a collapse since the crazy highs post news of their acquisition. So
I've thought about it, actually. I've thought about it because maybe not like establishing a long share position, but at least some leaps or something. And I don't know if they have any out for 2027, but I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great company.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thanks, gentlemen. And I will talk to you guys soon next week. And thanks everybody for joining us this week. Vince will hopefully be back.
So yeah.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.